Good afternoon, Wilmington people, or people wherever you happen to be tuning in from. My name's Chris. We're here at the Second Glass in the Cellar for Cellar Chats. I'm back. Had a little hiatus. I was out of town last week. Wasn't able to make the video call, which was a little bit of a bummer, but I was having a good time, so it wasn't a super bummer. But you know what? While I was gone, Wilmington got cold again. So we really, really need to channel that like 80-degree weather. Now, if you ask me personally, I like the weather we're having right now, but I think I'm the only one. So this week we're channeling some Southern California sunshine via wines from Santa Barbara County. We're gonna start out with a house favorite, Curran Winery, their Grenache Gris Rosé. We're going to follow that up with, actually, these are all house favorites. These are just really great classic wines from Santa Barbara. And then we're going to follow it up with a little duo Presqu'ile, that is how you pronounce that, Presqu'ile. Their Chardonnay from Santa Barbara. And last but not least, their Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara County. So, I mean, even the label says, hey, sunshine waves, although it looks a little stormy in this picture. But, you know, it's a beach scene. It says, hey, let's get some warm weather going on. All right, so, again, starting out on the flight this week, the Curran Grenache Gris. It is featured by The Glass here at Second Glass. It's been on by The Glass for some time now. But you know what? When it comes right down to it, the wine is spectacularly delicious and does all the things we want it to do from Santa Barbara. So let's get into it. So even though we're calling it, I called it, a little southern sunshine from Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara's really not Southern California. It's kind of like South Central California. You know, you're about, I think, 2 hours north of LA. You know, you're just south of Paso Robles. And although it's more in the southern part of California than, like, say, Napa or Sonoma, it is actually far cooler as a whole, as a climate. Santa Barbara is a really interesting area where if you talk to any winemaker that says, hey, and you say, hey, what makes Santa Barbara so interesting? Usually the first thing they're going to say is that, like, the way it sits along the coastline. So as you go up California coast, we'll pretend like this is like the California coast here. We got Pacific Ocean, United States. California coast kind of goes up, and then it does this thing like that, and it kind of juts out, and then it comes back up. So Santa Barbara kind of sits in this little, like, pocket where an entire mountain range, don't at me, I don't remember the mountain range. Basically, it's a transverse mountain range, so it runs east to west instead of north to south. So why is that interesting? Because what ends up happening is you get a lot of this coastal influence that brings a lot of cool, refreshing air in, and there's no mountain range to kind of like stop it. So you get this steady flow of airflow. And you get this really cooling aspect from the Pacific, which, if you're not familiar, the Pacific is quite cold, even in Southern California. You know, classic surfing area. The water is never very warm. You pretty much wear wetsuits year-round, no matter how hot it is outside. So why does that make wine interesting? Well, think about some of the most famous wine regions in the world. You know, particularly in the old world, these are cool wine growing regions. You know, Burgundy, Champagne, Northern Italy, Germany, you know, the parts of Spain outside of Rioja, which is rather warm, that really have been historically known for fascinating and interesting and complex wines. These are relatively, like, cooler regions. You know, they have more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? They have less of a California classic, I'm stereotyping here, a California-like climate. So they have cooler nights, colder winters, but then they have hot, warm summers. And Santa Barbara is one of those, like, weird spots where, like, you're like, oh, Santa Barbara, it's in southern, you know, not that far from LA. It's probably pretty hot there. It's actually a lot colder here than it is in Napa and Sonoma. So that was a really long explanation as to why Santa Barbara is interesting. So what does that mean in the glass? Typically for me, for Santa Barbara wines, there's a whole nother level of freshness and brightness on the palate and on the nose. You know, if you were to take similar wines made, you know, 4 hours north, or actually it's more like 5 hours north in like Napa, Sonoma, and you were to make them in a very similar way, what you would get is a lot more ripeness and richness and texture, because Napa and Sonoma is just a warmer climate overall. Though the temperature at night stays much warmer unless you're higher in the mountains, which most places are not in the mountains. A lot of it is like kind of in the valley floor, which makes amazing wines, just very stylistically different. So on the rosé, I mean, right out the gate, 100% Grenache Gris, so just Grenache rosé, pressed off from Grenache. Lots of like strawberry, kind of lemon minerality. And we featured this wine not long ago. It's really hard to not feature it. It's just that good. Again, there's that thing. I was just saying, there's like this crystalline freshness in wines that you get in Santa Barbara, where the fruit is really like pure and bright. There's great texture, but it's really all about that lifted freshness. And what you have here is you have, throughout the region, a lot of like diatomaceous, calcareous soils. So you get that kind of like bright freshness. Yeah, lovely strawberry fruit on the nose, palate a little more lemon curd, but leaning into maybe like a fresh lemon pie with like some fresh strawberries on top of it. It's not sweet, so don't think like sugary lemon pie, but you get the idea, kind of like a lemon tart. Again, that is Curran's Grenache Gris 2021 vintage, and it is showing absolutely beautifully. Big fan of that. Loving that on this flight. All right. Moving into our duo from Presqu'ile. Starting out with, Presqu'ile, based in, the actual winery, and, sorry, there was a message on my phone, and I was really messing with paying attention to what I'm doing here. I was very easily distracted over here. I'm like a kitten. Presqu'ile in Santa Barbara County, but specifically they're based in the Santa Maria Valley, and they have this rather large a large swath of land. I can't remember how big it is, but it's sizable. And most of it is not planted to grapes. So they have a little bit planted to fruit. To grapes, I think they grow some other things on the estate. But a relatively, we'll call it a newcomer, like in the late 90s, 2000s, they kind of got started. And they've really become kind of a darling of this area, in my opinion. They fly a little bit under the radar, but they just offer so much quality for price ratio. The wines are true to form, exactly what you would want if you were hunting down really great bottles of wine from Santa Barbara or just California in general. Definitely a more French vibe to these wines, and what I mean by that is, there's oak usage in the winery, but it is not a prominent flavor component. A lot of neutral oak, really clean pressing, some whole clusters. And what you get are these obviously old world influenced wines where there's more freshness. It's about the texture and the aromatics, but at the same time, plenty of California sunshine, which, by the way, even though it's colder here in Santa Barbara, there's still loads of sunshine. Lots of sunshine once the fog burns off, because there's a decent amount of fog here too. So I'm reading this Chardonnay. It is, and I'm sure I've said this before because I use this a lot for this wine. It is the Chardonnay, the California Chardonnay that I like to pour for people when they say, I don't like California Chardonnay. Because it doesn't taste like what most people visualize California Chardonnay. So that is that buttery, big, rich, full-bodied, kind of viscous, almost sweet characteristic. There's nothing wrong with that. Those wines are delightful. They have their place. But a lot of people don't like those. And they assume that all California Chardonnay is like that. This is not one of them. Again, there's that mineral undertone. It's definitely leaning more lemon citrus, maybe a little bit of lime citrus, some florals here. You can tell there's a little bit of oak. There's like a touch of richness on the back end, but it's not like an oakiness. It's just like it feels more like this wine has spent time in some kind of oak, but it doesn't smell or taste like oak. Definitely goes through some mallow. If I can't remember exactly how much or if all of it goes through malolactic, but that's that Malolactic is that conversion that goes from basically tasting like tart yogurt to tasting like cream. So it's like a richer, fuller thing. There's no right or wrong there, but there's always like a creaminess and like a softness to the palate when a white wine has gone through malolactic. Just frame reference, pretty much all red wine goes through malolactic, but not all white wines do. We could dive into that, but we're not going to go there. But it has enough texture and richness, on the palate that if you're used to those fuller bodied Chardonnays, it's not, going to be a turnoff. But if you really don't like those, it's going to be bright and fresh and crisp, and it has all the things that make Chardonnay beautiful. Orchard fruits and citrus and a little bit of like white flowers. Sorry, that was really good. And although I know it is like 40 degrees outside right now, it's going to get warmer this week. And I'd like to think that this wine flight that we chose is part of the reason it's going to get warmer. It's not, but it makes me feel better on the inside. Again, that was Presqu'ile's Chardonnay from Santa Barbara County. All right, moving in, the Pinot Noir, which could arguably be like the favorite of these two for most people when I show them out. Again, I do represent these at Kellogg Selections, so I get to take these around and share. I've got some amazing people who have been supporting these wines for a long time, so it's always good to bring them out to more people, though. And, oh man, wow. So pretty on the nose, and that's one of those things that I think Santa Barbara Pinot does really well. Again, I'm generalizing, but there is so much lift to this wine and so much aromatic complexity. There's spice, there's cherry, there's a little bit of raspberry, maybe a touch of rhubarb. I mean, it is wildly beautiful on the nose. I don't even need to drink it. I could just sit here and smell the wine. It's that pretty on the nose. So good. Again, coming in with that little bit of spice. That's that, it does spend some time in some neutral oak. So you get some spice from that. But you also, I think you get a lot of spice. I think they have a decent amount of Dijon clone Pinot Noir, which is kind of the most widely planted clone of Pinot. But it's known for having this kind of underlying spice, kind of darker fruit characteristic. But at the same time, really vibrant, really fresh. It's going to be 75 on Friday. So this wine sitting outside is going to be so appealing and so tasty. So again, let's do a quick wrap up. This week, Santa Barbara, bringing the sunshine for us. Curran Grenache Gris 2021. Presqu'ile Chardonnay Santa Barbara 2021. And last but not least, Presqu'ile Santa Barbara Pinot 2020. Man, these are good. So get out here, just close your eyes, pretend it's a lot warmer than it really is, and enjoy some wines that are going to remind you about summertime, because you know what? It's right around the corner. So I'll see y'all next week.